Hey everyone, my name is Rachel and I'm going to be talking about the truth about red meat from a nutrition view. So let's get started. What is red meat? Red meat is flesh from animals that have a high proportion of red muscle fibers. Now all meat contains white muscle fibers and red muscle fibers, and it just happens that red meat contains more red muscle fibers, giving it its color. Now red meat can be found in beef, lamb, pork, goat, and venison. And you might find it interesting that I added pork. If you have heard in the media, the pork industry has tried to portray its products as the other white meat, but that's not the case. It's still considered a red meat. So what is the issue with red meat? Well, the issue is found in the media and how it portrays red meat. You'll find complete opposite sides. You'll find how good it is for you, and then you'll find how bad it is and how it can cause cancer and does all these negative things on your body. But really what we need is nutrition education, so we can, as consumers, can go and make those decisions. Well, do we want to consume this or should we not? So that's really my point in this presentation, is to give you the background of the nutrition so you can make the decisions. And in the first few slides, you see the opposite viewpoints of the media portraying red meat. It's good, it's bad. Now I'm going to give you some negatives of consuming red meat. Red meat contains more saturated fat than other meats and plant proteins. It's high in cholesterol. And the saturated fats and cholesterol can raise your LDL, your bad cholesterol, which is the one that clogs your arteries, causes heart disease, causes strokes. Other facts you will find online portraying the negative side of red meats is eating too much can lead to an increased risk of heart disease, colon cancer, bowel cancer, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. Those are just a few to name. But I really want to point out that it says eating too much can lead. It doesn't say it will cause these things. Eating too much. Well, everything has a limit. So I just think that's really important to this presentation. And in the bottom corner, I included an article from Science Direct that states that red meat contains several substances that are potentially carcinogenic, and consumption of red meat is associated with carcinogenic processes. Well, if I didn't know the truth about red meat and read this, I wouldn't want to consume it. So I totally understand those people who are just totally against it, because it's the media, is how the media portrays it. So let's go into some health benefits. The main health benefit for meat, whether it be red meat or any other type, is protein. Protein helps as an energy source. It builds muscles. It has essential amino acids that are needed in our daily diets. I could just go on and on about how important protein is for our diets. We must have protein in our daily diets. So protein, interesting fact is that meat protein is more digestible than plant protein, and we need 2 times as much plant protein to equal meat protein. And you'll see this infographic published by the beef industry saying how good beef is. It contains many minerals and vitamins that we need in our daily diets. Now this slide is the most important slide to the presentation, the correct way to consume red meat. Now I'm not pushing you to eat red meat or to not eat red meat, but this is the facts about it. The correct way. You should consume around 70 grams or less a day of red meat. An example is half a large burger patty. You should try to consume lean or low-fat meat. These contain less saturated fat. And I want to point out this infographic in the bottom corner, and it is published by the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And the Dietary Guidelines for Americans is nutritionists like myself. It is our go-to book. It is our rule book. This is what we follow. And they published this graph of the top sources and averages of intake of saturated fats in America. And if you look at it real closely, meat, seafood, and poultry fall into 4% of the average intake of saturated fat. And it'd be interesting to see really if you break it down more. Okay, meat, you have white meat, you have red meat, you have processed meat. So 4%, and that's including all meats, that's not bad. Like, there's so many other things that we could cut down in our daily diets that we don't need, that contribute to our high intakes of saturated fats. So red meat really, in the long run, isn't our bad guy. And going further into the dietary guidelines, it states healthy diets include lean meats, lower consumption of red meats, and that 10 to 35% of daily calories should be from proteins. So I want to go back to lower consumption of red meats. Nowhere in the dietary guidelines does it say exclude red meat from your diet. Nowhere. It says a lower consumption, so it can be included in our healthy diets. It can be included daily. We just have to limit ourselves. And I think that's the key point to nutrition in general. You just have to know whether, like, you have to know your limits, and that's the case for red meat. Red meat can be associated with healthy diets. And in the middle, I show 2 pictures of some foods that contain red meat that are so good for you. And I think really our viewpoint is, we think of red meat, we think of that big steak and baked potato, or we think of like going to McDonald's and getting a hamburger and french fries. Well, yeah, like those aren't that healthy, but we can include it in healthy meals to really turn it around. And so in conclusion, red meat is good for you in your limits. So when you're going out there and consuming it, just think like everything has to have a limit, and that's the same for red meat. So thank you.